Hi guys, it's such a pleasure to have you back or you tuning in. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. If you haven't yet subscribed, please kindly do so. Would appreciate your support and to hear from you. If you find our messages quite helpful and inspiring for you, please kindly share with your loved ones, like, and also don't forget to subscribe, because subscribing is very important. It keeps us going and spurs us on to keep doing what we're doing. This is Lips and Bounds. All we are here to is to encourage one another and to inspire one another to pursue giving glory to our Almighty in everything, and to grow in all facets of our lives for the glory of God. Because of the current settings in our society, we are unable to continue with filming, obviously in respect of the people who want to share their stories, and also to try and do our honest part as stewards of being our brother's keepers. So in the meantime, what we're going to be doing is whenever the Spirit leads, I am going to be sharing devotionals with you of what I would have learned through my Bible study, and hopefully it can be inspiring, encouraging also for you. So during my Bible study this week, like I alluded in the past video that I made, if you didn't get a chance to watch that, please kindly do so. I just felt in my spirit that I needed to draw strength and lessons from the different women in the Bible. And last time we were talking about Rahab and how her destiny and her story was changed. And so this today, I would like to share the story of the widow at Zarepath. Now, this happened in an era where Elijah was being used by God, and Israel was under the king Ahab at the time. And there was so much idolatry that was happening in the land, and God was not happy with them. And he had used Elijah to go and bring this message to show them just how unhappy he was with them. And so this story is around that setting. Now, Elijah had just told Ahab what the Lord has sent him to share with him. And the story is in the book of 1 Kings. So it actually begins from chapter 15, 16. But the story that I need to cover today of the widow at Zarepath is mainly in chapter 17. You can also find it in in links to the story in the book of Luke chapter 4. So what happened was Elijah had just told Ahab that there would not be any rain in Israel until they repented. And he said he had asked God that there shouldn't be any rain until such a time when the people had repented of their sins. And so this was going to stretch out for a very long period of time. And you can imagine, as a king, this is not the kind of message that you want to hear, especially from a man maybe that you might not hold in high esteem, such as Elijah. So Ahab was cross with Elijah, and he was after his life. So he had to flee, and God at first told him to go into the wilderness, and he was by a brook until the brook dried up. And then God told Elijah to go to a town that was outside of Israel called Sidon, and there was like a small portion of Sidon that was called Zarepath. So this is where the background of how Elijah came to be in Sidon, and how she met the widow at Zarepath. And the Bible makes it very clear, that there were many widows in Israel. But however, the Spirit of the Lord sends Elijah to go outside of Israel to Zarepath in Sidon. Now, as he went there, the Spirit of the Lord had already gone before him and had instructed the widow that Elijah then met as he got to Sidon. He was actually hungry and thirsty. And when he saw this widow gathering sticks, he asked her for some water to drink. And the widow, even though she had never met Elijah, she was kind enough to be hospitable even to a stranger. And back in the day, culture was not very kind for you just dealing kindly with a stranger. You know, it was something that was because there was so much segregation according to the tribes or where you are from. And if you are a stranger, sometimes it was not easy for you to just get some hospitality from a stranger. But something is very special about this widow. When Elijah asked for water, she didn't ask for many details. She straight away went into action. And when she was about to go and get some water for Elijah, Elijah also asked for food. He asked if she could also prepare some food for him while she was at it. And the widow did not decline making food for him, but she explained her situation. She told him she was actually in the process of gathering firewood so that she could make the last meal for her and her son. She only had a son, one son. And so she told him, the last bit of a meal that I have is what I was trying to prepare right now for my child. And so Elijah shockingly says, you know what, you go and prepare a cake for me. Go and prepare a cake for me. And then when you are done, you can then go back and prepare a cake for yourself and your son. And he said, because the Lord has told me that your supply will never run out. And just awesomely, this lady heeded to this call. She heeded to this call without question. So she went in, she prepared food for Elijah, and there was enough left for her to prepare for a son. And as funny as it was, God stayed true to what he had promised. So you find that this woman never ran out of the supplies that she needed to make a meal for herself, to make a meal for Elijah, to make a meal for her son, for as long as Elijah was there. Now, Elijah had told her that God had said her supplies would not run until the famine was over. Now, if you read in my Bible or in your Bible, it says the famine went for 3 years, 6 months. So this famine had not just affected Israel, it had also affected beyond the borders. So it wasn't anything that was a surprise that there was a famine. And what is so intriguing is this lady, this widow, took Elijah at her word. And God remained true to his word. Like he had promised, they had more than enough to share with Elijah. Now, after some time, the woman unfortunately lost a child, the only child that she had, even though she had taken in this stranger and helped this man of God. Remember, she hadn't experienced Elijah firsthand with him being a man of God or with him doing his work with God. She just took him at his word. That is something that is so phenomenal. But lo and behold, after being hospitable, after being kind, after being obedient to what was the command or call from God, you can imagine how hurt she was when the only thing in the world that mattered most was taken away from her, and that was her son. And as human as most of us can be, she broke down and she blamed Elijah for the misfortune that had befallen her. And Elijah was also surprised, because I think he was also drawn to this woman with the kindness, the generosity that she had shown him, and he couldn't understand why God had allowed his son to die. But nonetheless, Elijah went in, he prayed and he laid over the child, and he asked God that he might restore the life of her son. And indeed, God came through. He hearkened to the prayer and he gave back life to her son, and she praised him. She praised God for what he had done. And now she had true proof that this indeed was the man of God. Now, this is just the background to the story, in case you hadn't read about it. But if you're intrigued to know more or to just read it for yourself and to cross-check, it's found in 1 Kings chapter 17. So when I was just, contemplating about it, I thought of the many lessons that we can draw from this humble yet very wise, faithful woman, And first and foremost, I wondered why the Bible in particular felt the need to actually say, to actually emphasize that there were many widows even in Israel. And yet God chose a widow outside of Israel. And I wondered, why is that so? And I think that's where our first lesson can be drawn from. That God could have used any widow from Israel, could have used the people who would have been deemed worthy, you know, or God-fearing, or rather were well acquainted with the workings of God. But God chose to use an outsider. He called the unqualified, and he qualified this widow, who was an outsider, but God chose to use her, and he used her, and she obeyed. God showed that he could work with nothing. With nothing. He wanted to prove his providence in spite of the circumstances. He wanted to prove his providence. And so he chose a widow who literally had nothing, who literally could not go out and work because there was a famine. So there was no field to till and maybe get more food from, you know. But God chose this particular woman in spite of her circumstance, where she literally had her last meal. She literally had nothing. And God chose to use that very same person for his glory. So for me, God has a lesson for each one of us, you know, that in spite of what you feel you have or you don't have, God can still use you. He wants to use the nothingness. He wants to use that lack in you for his glory, to prove the strength of his providence. Number 3, the lesson that I learned from this was the widow expressed a great deal of faith. In spite of her not having a first-hand experience with God, she didn't need a grand gesture of the power of God. She knew there was a God. And when Elijah told her that God had said so, she took him at his word. That's such a great deal of faith. Most of us, even who have been born Christian or who have seen many works and wonders in God, we sometimes fail to wrap around or grasp when God says something maybe that seems out of character, or something that seems out of character with regards to our circumstances. But the widow of Zarepath showed a great deal of faith as just the word of Elijah. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so profound, especially at a time when the whole land had a famine, you know, which would have made anyone in the right frame of mind doubt the credibility of Elijah's story. She chose to believe in the goodness in humanity. She chose to do what she knew in her heart was right, even though it meant she had to share the very last bits that could have helped herself and the son. Now we could also learn from that great deal of faith from him. And even when the widow at Zarepath, when she fell as a human, when she blamed Elijah when she lost a child, God did not falter. You know, he did not falter to say, you know what, you're not faithful enough. How can you doubt the power of when all these days you've been eating from my providence? No, he remembered that she was just but dust. And so he did not judge her according to her pain, because he understood the pain of losing a child. He understood the pain of losing what you love. And so he did not hold it against her. Rather, he chose the time to show just how good he can be, and he gave her back her son. Just like God covers our multitudes of sin with the blood and the all-cleansing blood of his child, Jesus Christ. It's the same way he covered her weakness in a time of strife, when she felt helpless, when she felt like she had been stripped of everything in the world that she held dear. God chose to show himself in that circumstance. And the last lesson that I drew from this was just like Rahab, God proves that his intention is to extend his grace even to the underdogs of society. His love is seeking even those deemed unworthy. Now, These are some of the lessons that I drew. And I don't know what you are facing right now. I don't know what is going on in your life. But what that has taught me is each one of us, we each have a work to do. And sometimes when people are expecting something from a certain person, sometimes God looks past that person and looks to someone whom everyone else might not even consider. That's the workings of God. But just like the widow at Zarepath, when you choose to believe him at his word, he takes that opportunity and he runs with it for the glory of his name. Now you might feel, no, I don't have a good voice to sing. God has placed you and blessed you in another way. You might have lost something, or you might be at the brink of, how much more can I give? I'm doing everything that I can. What else can God expect to me? What can I do with my life? And the circumstances around you are not very encouraging of you to do anything for God. But God still chooses you, the unqualified, you, whom everyone else might not look into, who everyone else might look past. And yet God says, I can qualify you for grand things. Now the widow of Zarepath is written in the Bible as an example of profound faith. Now in a world or in a land where she could have died with her son, because there was a famine and she didn't have any field to till, and 3.5 years is a very long time to go without food, without work. She could have died. But God had a plan, and he ordered her steps in the direction for her survival. All she had to do was believe him at his word. When he sent his messenger, all she needed to do was take one simple step of faith, and God would do the rest. And so, my brothers and my sisters, in your life, believe God for any step that you want to take. He said, even with faith as little as a mustard seed, his grace is sufficient to work through it. And just like a mustard seed can grow and blossom and there's a whole field, God says, try me with a little mustard of faith and be obedient when I raise my call to you. And you will see how many wonders I will do through you. And you will see if I won't throw a lifeline to you. Because the widow at Zarepath, God threw a lifeline at her. And she was wise enough. And she was faithful enough. And she was obedient enough to catch the lifeline. I hope you do take the lifeline when God throws it at you and you are obedient. All you need to do is believe and be obedient, and he will do wonders. Now, I hope you've been blessed by the sharing that I felt in my heart I needed to share with someone. If you have been blessed, please kindly share a comment or share or subscribe. We would love to hear from you how blessed you are. And if you have anything that you want to share, it would be so much of refreshment to hear from you. And so until next time, may God keep you safe. I hope you're keeping yourselves and your loved ones safe, but above all, I hope you're keeping your faith strong, knowing that these two shall come to pass and the Lord will be with us. Until next time, God bless.